You have smart money on one hand, dumb money on the other. Also a category where smart people do really dumb things with money, which can be catastrophic to your finances. In this video, we're gonna be looking at some of the things that are the most detrimental to your finances, can really take a toll, not only short-term, but long-term when it comes to not following very simple steps of things that you do with your money. First one we look at is without savings, you will tumble into debt during an emergency. Now, this is one of the biggest reasons why we talk about an emergency fund. Even if it is that baby step, $1,000 in a savings account, it gets you out of the cycle of having to borrow money every time that emergency happens. Now, we see this a lot. Again, if you don't have an emergency fund, let's say for instance, there's a $3,000 expense, you have to go back to borrowing money, which of course is going to have an APR attached to it, which is going to cost you additional funds because you don't have the emergency fund built or you don't have those savings built up. Now, if you do have those savings, you can cover the expense, recouping and not paying the additional interest, but then you can build up that savings account. Now, it really does come with kind of a double-edged sword on this one. Number one, it is very common that people do not save money. A lot of people say they can't save money, but they don't budget. A lot of people say they can't spend money, but they spend a lot of money on things that they don't need. The want bucket is huge, where the need bucket is slowly kind of depleted. Second one, it will devastate your finances. Not only financially having to pay back all that money, plus the additional amount that you have to pay with the APR, but in addition, if you're continuing to borrow and if you're living on the credit cards, which we know are at $1.3 trillion as of Q4 of 2023, it can also result in a much lower credit score, the payments going up, the APR going up, and making it very expensive. Now, if you don't save money, this means that you're going to debt finance everything in the case of an emergency, which again can be very, very expensive. If you blow out a tire, a lot of people are doing cash advances. A lot of people are also doing payday loans, things that are super expensive. That is really worst case scenario that you're looking at, 20, 30, possibly even a payday advance where you're talking 100% to 300% APR when it comes to getting that repaired because you're not saving properly and you're not budgeting properly. Now, in addition, when you look at your savings, this is again the reason why we say save yourself and pay yourself first. Even if you're putting away $10, $20, $50 a paycheck, it is going to make a big difference. It not only creates the habit of saving, but it also builds up the consistency of having money set aside. What I see for a majority of people is they get paid, they pay all of their expenses, everything they have left, they are pushing it into debt. They're paying down their credit cards, they're paying down their loans, they're paying down everything. However, they are not even saving 50 bucks, 100 bucks for themselves, which means as soon as something happens, boom, they're right back to borrowing on those credit cards. They're looking at the very, very high interest rate debt that they're getting. Now, again, fully funded emergency fund is 3 to 6 months, depending really where your job is, knowing exactly if you're in a sales-oriented role, saving a little bit more. If you're in a very stationary role, saving, 3 to 4 to 5 months, whatever you're comfortable with. And this is going to vary depending on where you are within the time frame. Now, once you do get starting with that savings account, then we get into the retirement accounts. We get into the investment accounts. We get a little bit further once you start getting into really the habits of saving and you start getting a little bit of money saved up. You have that emergency fund. And the other one, or the next one we're looking at, is never leaving money on the table. Now, for this, young people, you will trust me and you will regret it later if you are leaving money on the table. So there's a couple ways to leave money on the table. And I just want to share a quick story with you guys because this was actually something that happened to me. I had an individual that was 55 years old, had been working the same job for 14 years. That is right, 14 years at the age of 55. We started getting into the discussion of the 401k plan and what they offer at his employer. He said, yep, they do offer a 401k plan, but I do not contribute to it. Further inquiry, kind of why. Didn't trust the stock market and had seen it gone up and down, many years ago. I'm talking 25 plus years ago. However, I said, does your company offer a match? He said, of course they do. They offer 4% match. Right there off the bat, he is leaving 4% on the table for 14 years that he has been employed with that employer. I said a second way to really think about this is when you're putting your contribution in there, if they're matching your 4%, so you put in an investment account, your investment account goes down 50%. Boom, the market is crushed, 50% reduction in that investment account. Guess what? you are still at the initial contribution you put in, you are still even. You're still square. The 4% that you lost or the 50% reduction that we just seen in that portfolio is what the company put in, that you don't have to worry about it. And I said, even looking back at the VOO, the S&P 500, I said, looking back the last 15 years, it's performed exceptionally well. Looking at a few things that his company offers with the 401k plan, we set him up because he was leaving money on the table. Now, already being at the age of 55, very short amount of time to really take full impact of the compounding interest that he's going to see, the growth factors he's going to see, but really not leaving the free money on the table. And again, the quote is, you must really hate money if you're leaving it on there. Now, for a majority of us, 401k plans are something that a lot of people do say are kind of a trap, or something that, you don't need to invest in. Guys, 401k plans, you have to, at least at the bare minimum, taking that 401k match, because again, it is leaving free money on the table. Now, in addition, just like we were talking about that emergency fund, when you have your emergency fund, you have to start putting it to work. What we mean by this is, when you look at the emergency fund, there's a couple different options. Short-term CDs are an option just in case that emergency comes up, but also looking at high yield savings accounts, possibly even, and I don't really recommend doing this, is putting some money into an investment account or a retirement account, or something that's going to provide you some sort of tax advantage with that emergency fund. Because of course, the big thing that you want with the emergency fund is keeping the funds liquid. Now, again, you could also look at this a couple different ways with the emergency fund. So let's say, regardless of the industry that you're in, you have 3 months, you know where your budget's at, you know exactly where you are for your emergency fund. Even taking that 3 months of emergency fund, the other 3 months to make your fully funded 6 months of emergency fund, investing it or being a little bit more cautious about it. That might, again, be the high yield savings account. That might be, putting it into a couple different things that are going to allow it to grow a little bit, not just keeping the emergency fund. For a lot of people, what I see is the emergency fund sits in a savings account. Let's say you have it at Chase, at Bank of America, at Wells Fargo. It's earning a 0.3% or a 0.03% in some cases. So literally you have thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars just sitting in an account that is earning nothing. And your emergency fund is getting eaten up by inflation every single year, which is the reason why, like I said, if you're looking to do this, you have to keep your emergency fund somewhere that at least it's going to stay pace with inflation, or at least grow a little bit, because you're parking that money. And for a lot of people, they'll build up that emergency fund. The emergency fund will sit there kind of forever. You might have an emergency fund where it might be a couple $1,000s, you cover it easy, you get the money put back in there, and the emergency fund kind of sits dormant for months, weeks, some of us years, some of us even decades, without any growth in that emergency fund. And the final one we look at is cutting the cord. Now, saving money and using your time more wisely. This is something that I have really stressed probably over the last couple of years, since I've really gotten into content production in YouTube. And if you like the content that I'm putting out, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. But cutting the cord is kind of crazy. Now, there's an old saying, how much does your TV cost you? Now, again, this is something that I always go back to and something that I always think of. When you think of a TV, you might pay $1,000 for a TV, but what does that TV actually cost you? It costs you time. That is really the big thing to keep in mind when you're thinking of cable channels. Some cable channels or cable providers, not only is it very expensive. When we cut the cord and got rid of Comcast, we were paying $189 a month for our cable, $100 for the internet. So it was running $289 per month for the cable and internet from our house. Now we cut the cord, we got rid of cable, that saved $190 a month. Do you know how much of a game changer it is, and how much it would be for a majority of people if you were cutting $190 out of your budget, out of your cable budget, putting it back into debt repayment? Not only would you get that $190 back, but you'd also be paying down your debt, improving your credit score, and also paying less in interest on that. Now, of course, again, when it goes back to how much does your TV cost you, on a majority of people, they say about $20,000 to $30,000 a year. That is right. When you think about that fundamentally, what does a television cost you? So let's say, for instance, you're spending 2 or 3 hours a day watching TV, regardless of what you want. And I have nothing against TV. I just find it to be a pretty big time sink. So I limit my TV to 1 hour and 1 hour at most, if the TV even comes on, because there's a lot of other things you can be doing. Now, what we mean in a bigger factor when you're looking $20, $30, $50,000 of what that television is costing you, you could learn new skills. You could go back to school. You could have a side hustle. You could do something that you're passionate about or something that you really enjoy. For a majority of people that I know, TV is not the number one priority when it comes to things that they want to do and things they want to accomplish in life. When you write down your goals and you kind of plan short-term, long-term goals, whether they're personal, professional, financial, whatever they may be, most of the time people are not going to put watching TV on that list, because again, that is not what life is about. And the TV does cost you a lot of money. Not only the monthly liability or the monthly cost that we have with cable itself, but also sitting down there, using your time more wisely and saving money in the same manner. We even went to just having internet, which means we have smart TVs. Smart TVs were in run about $300 right now. But getting the smart TV, having free apps on there, a lot of live TV you can actually watch for free, which means, again, not only spending your time wisely, getting out from in front of that TV, but also saving you an incredible amount of money for cutting the cord. So, all right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.